Hello Webflowers. Right, this is going to be an in-depth tutorial showing you how to get set up and started on Webflow and how Webflow actually works. So, Webflow is obviously the buzzword at the moment for no-code tools. It is a drag and drop visual coder. What I mean by that is that it actually utilizes the box model. Now, don't worry if you don't understand what that means, but pretty much every single website is built using blocks. I will show you a bit later visually what I mean by this. So basically it is a great tool because it is using all of the best methods and the actual ways websites should be built, but in a visual way where you can obviously build websites without utilizing code. Now, whilst they say you don't need to use code and you can build websites without ever touching CSS or JavaScript, you can actually make really powerful websites with code. So whilst it's a no-code builder, you can actually build websites with code within it as well. So it's a great tool to utilize if, for example, you do have some background knowledge and you want to get the best mix of speed, but also being able to make complex sites as well. On top of that, it actually has a very powerful CMS, which is a content management system. This allows you to create things like blog articles or directories, or even things like Airbnb listings, where you can sell multiple products. On top of that, you actually have conditional logic, which means that it will show things if certain variables are met to, or it will hide elements if certain variables are not met to. A powerful reason why a lot of people use Webflow is because of its complex interactions. A lot of award-winning websites nowadays are actually using Webflow because it's so easy to see the visuals on the screen and create some very compelling loading animations and drag and drop and hover and all of that good stuff that makes a website really buzz out. Another selling point for Webflow is that it actually has a client editor. So what is amazing about this, as a Webflow design agency, I actually package up websites for my clients, and I will add on a service where I will train their team in actually using the simple editor to update content without the use of having to use a developer like me. Another very great element is that you can edit SEO on site so easily, meta tags, meta descriptions, everything inside. Now, a lot of tools like WordPress, you actually have to use plugins to do all of this. So pretty much there is endless possibilities you can do within Webflow, and straight out the box you get all of this. And the plugins that you can add to it just enhance this even further, and it is just an absolutely amazing tool. Now, one of the pain points about Webflow is it does have a kind of steep learning curve. Now, compared to Wix, Squarespace, and other website builders, it's a lot more open in what you can build. So that means that there is a complexity of understanding how the basics of websites work. But the solution to this is that Webflow has one of the most vibrant communities out there. So there is literally an unlimited database of resources you can copy and paste. Like I said, the community is very helpful. I have never run into a problem where I haven't been able to find the solution for something that I've run into. Not only that, because it has a steep learning curve, there's going to be less competition if you are the best. So I would say you can learn this within 6 months if you are super willing to learn this software. But for me, I took it slowly and I mastered it within about a year. And now I'm able to create 10,000 plus pound websites because I know how to use the software. The other great thing, even though it has a steep learning curve, is that you're not corner-holed into anything. If the client asks for something, you can use custom code or hire a JavaScript expert to create this complex component that you really need. If you use Wix or Squarespace, you're not going to be able to do that. And, well, you can, but it's not going to be working as well as Webflow. So what we're going to look in this video is setting up the account, setting up your first project, then looking at the project settings, looking at the work space that you're going to be utilizing. I'm going to explain the box model so you know how to build websites, and then we're going to build a first landing page hero. And then I'm going to explain responsiveness. So if you stick till the end, you're going to know how to actually build a landing page. And of course, if you want to learn more about this, join the Facebook group or join the newsletter below, where I will be releasing more in-depth courses for them experts that want to make a lot of money. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more. So if we just come over to my desktop, you will see that I have set up a brand new, fresh, sexy account. I don't know why I said sexy, but yeah, it's here. And this is what you'll be seeing as well. So of course, go onto Google, sign up for your account, and meet me back here when you have opened up the Webflow. So hopefully you're here now. What we're going to do is we're going to start a blank site from scratch, which you can see here. So we're going to select that, and we're going to call this, because my design agency is called Legacy Design Agency, obviously you call it whatever your agency is, and we're going to select create. Now obviously you're going to have a lot of tooltips coming up if you are new to this site, so just remove all of these, or actually I would suggest you do the tooltips before you listen to the rest of my video, but for the sake of this, I'm just going to get rid of everything. So let's run into, first and foremost, the project settings. So we go to site settings in the top left by the burger icon, and I'm just going to quickly run through all of the tabs. So general, of course, you've got the name, and the folders are going to be when you actually extend your agency and build more websites. Don't worry about that. The favicon is the image that is at the top of your tab. So if you see here, I'm using Arc Browser, you see the image here. The favicon is going to show there. You just need to upload a 32 by 32 and 256 by 256 pixel. Obviously set your time zone to where you are. I'm in Thailand at the moment, so I'm going to set it to that. And then everybody misses this off. Make sure you put in your language code here, and then if we keep on scrolling down, you can see if you do purchase account, you won't be able to turn these off if you have a free account, but you want to, once you purchase a CMS plan, which I'll show you in a bit, you want to turn this off, otherwise you'll have a Webflow badge on your website. Next, obviously, again, you want to take the Webflow branding off your HTML if you pay for the site, and now you can see the site activity if you do have multiple agents on your website, but because we're newbies, we're definitely not going to have that. Now, save the changes of the language code, and we're going to come over to members. This is going to be a powerful section for when you actually want to add your clients as a editor of the site. Again, you're going to need plans for this, so we'll skip over that. Publishing, this is where you're going to add your hosting. So ideally, where is that? Yes, so when you add your plan, you're going to have a area where you can, so obviously you see here, add a site plan. You're going to be able to hook that up, and I'm going to create a video to show you how to hook up your domain using GoDaddy. Very easy with GoDaddy. I do advise using GoDaddy because there's an automatic setup that you can use with Webflow. 301 redirects, which you will not need for the moment. That is just for redirecting old pages. And then all of this, once you buy a plan, you want to be turning all of this on because it's going to speed up the overall site. Now, plans. This is where you're going to add a plan. Now, pretty much for the majority of you, you're probably going to want to start on Starter, but if you do build your website now, marketing, you're going to need the CMS because it's going to get rid of that Webflow branding and allow you to add a domain. So pretty much everyone's going to need the CMS, sorry, the basic plan. The CMS plan is if you have things like blog articles or projects that you want to showcase. So if you do want to make CMS sections, I do advise moving to the CMS. Now, SEO is all of that good stuff where you can add in your sitemap to Google Search Console. I know most of you aren't going to know what that is. There will be another video showing you this, but it basically allows you to update the site via Google if you make any changes, making sure that all of your new content is shown to all of your customers. Forget that for the moment. And then you've got forms. Now, of course, if you have forms on your site, you want the forms sending to your account. So this, make sure you don't overlook this, but the email that you have associated with the Webflow account is going to populate the email in here. So you will get a copy of any client emails to your website. And then obviously you have reCAPTCHA and just a few other settings that you will not need to know about now. Now, you're going to want to obviously upload fonts, so you can either add Google fonts from here, or you can upload your custom fonts, or you can obviously use the system fonts that within Webflow. Now, for this project, I'm going to upload my own font, so I've just got custom fonts here. I've got one for my heading, which is Lunima Bold, and that should upload there. Just make sure that you have all of this pre-populated. This is selected as swap. This is going to allow, if some computers don't allow Lunima, it's going to swap out the font. Now we're going to select upload font file. Now you can see that it's shown here, installed fonts, and this will show up in our project. I'm now going to upload a body font for my basic fonts, which is here. Now I have a variable font weight, which means that there's only one and there's going to be multiple different weights, which is great. So if you can get a variable font weight, that's great. Otherwise you're going to have to add your semi-bold, bold, light, all of that. Variable fonts are super easy, and actually Webflow has some animation styles that you can add to that. So I'm going to upload that font. Now I've got both my fonts in my Webflow project, which is great. Now I'm going to show you the custom code, because in the future you will want this. But the custom code, of course, you're going to have to add a site plan, but that's going to allow you to add some crazy features in the future when you become a Webflow pro and want to make them £10,000 websites. So that's a basic overview. In the advanced course, I'll be showing you a deep dive once you buy an account, but let's go back to the designer. Let's check that them fonts have actually shown up within our project folder. Now, of course, if you're just using variable fonts, don't worry about this. Let's go down to the right panel. This is your styles panel, and as you can see, I've selected font, and up here we've got Lunima Bold and Railway. Right, so we are good to go. Right, let me go over the overview of Webflow and what each of the panels means. So if you need to get back to your page settings, we've got the top right up here with your dashboard and all of the easy shortcuts. But over here we have I would say the master tools of your site. So you can add quick elements to your website. Now you've got sections and layouts. You can actually search libraries for layouts, but all of these elements, pretty much everything you're going to be building, like I explained, the box model is going to be utilizing this called a div block. Now a div block is just a square. It's a square that can change in any size, shape or form. It can move to a rectangle, landscape, portrait, and then all of the styles you'll be applying will be to this div block. Now, all of these other structures are basically just preset divs with styles added to them by Webflow. So everything you see here is made with a div. So I tend to use divs for everything because I like the customizability, but because we are newbies and we just want to look at how Webflow is utilized, we're going to start using all of the Webflow sections themselves. So I advise using all of the components within here because you're never going to miss a key important feature that you're supposed to be adding to certain components. Right, the next one is next one is components. Like I said, this is going to allow you to basically create, say for example, a button, and then you're going to be able to create a component of that, and then you'll be able to scatter that around the site, and when you make a change to one of them, it's going to make a change to all of them. So obviously if you have a site that's 400 pages big, you don't want to have to change a button manually on every single page. So this gives you the power of changing things all at once, very easy. Right, this is probably one of the most important panels. It's the navigator. Now if we put in some basic elements, so I'm going to go to the top, and everything starts with a page section, and you can see here in the navigator inside of the body we have a page section. Now within that section you always want to add a container, and then as you can see this little arrow here, we can click that and it's going to open up and show the container. Now, say for example, we want a 2-column layout within the container. We're going to go back to add, and then we're going to scroll down, and then you can see here let's add 2 columns. Let's go back to the navigator, and as you can see, we've got the body, a section, a container, and then inside of that we have our columns, which is great news. So the navigator you're going to be using a lot. It is obviously to allow you to navigate around the screen. Now there is another way you can use this. I never use it, but down here you can see when you select a certain element, you can see I've selected the container, it shows you everything beneath that. So we've got a body, section, container. If I select columns, it's going to show everything below that. If I select section, it's going to show everything below that. And of course you can select the elements from that panel as well. Very handy. Now, of course, you see the blue toggles here for the elements. You can actually click these and see more ways you can edit or select the component. But for now, we're just going to leave that alone. So the navigator, very important. Now we have the pages panel. Of course, at the start, we're just going to have a home page. Now we have utility pages already preset within Webflow. You have a password page, which pretty much I never use because I don't really make many membership pages, but this will be for that. And then you have a 404 page, which you will need to set up. This is just if any of your pages redirect to the wrong link. Now, if you want to get into the page settings, which is very important as well, you want to select this edit page settings. Now, this is where you can edit the name. You can obviously edit the title tag. And of course, there's tooltips for all of these, but the title tag is what's going to show up on Google. So I'm going to change this to Legacy Design Agency. And then I want to change meta description to "We are the best design agency in the world." Yeah, that's facts. You can look that up on Wikipedia. So this is giving you a little bit of a preview of what is within Google. Now, open graph title, you want to add an image here because this is going to show up. Say, for example, you share on Facebook or Instagram. Normally a website comes up with a preview image. This is going to be the preview image that makes your website look great. I like to tick these boxes because then it's going to pull through the text from the top. And this is where you can add your metagraph image. Now, everything below here, you're not really going to need, but let's save that. Now, if you want to add a new page, say, for example, it's an about page, you want to come to the top here, create new page, and then let's call this an about page. And then let's come down to the title tag, and we're going to put Legacy Design Agency again, and then we're going to put a little line and then call it about. And then for the meta description, about the best design agency in the world. And then same again, these have been ticked, which is all great. And then let's create that page. And you can see in the static pages, it's going to add the about page right here. So actually I'm going to get rid of page just to clean things up. I'm going to have page name just called about. Now let's come back to the home page. Now for the start, this is the CMS collection list. We're not going to delve into this. This is going to make your site very powerful though. Like I said, this is where you're going to be creating blog articles or projects or anything that has a directory database. It basically is going to allow you to duplicate content over and over and over again very easily without having to create separate pages. Logic, which is here, is an open beta. You will when you see this video, you might have access to this, but this is more of a complex advanced feature, so I'd leave off for now. Same with users. This is if you want to set up locked gateway portals, for example, signups or e-commerce stores, so I'd leave that as well. Then you have an e-commerce panel. Again, this is to set up your shopping if you so wish to use. We're not going to look into that. And then another important panel is the assets panel. So this is where you're going to add all of your images, logos, anything that makes your website visually appealing. So let's actually get started here, and I'm going to add some files into this. So I actually, for the website that I'm going to create, I already have a legacy arrow for my buttons. I already have an image for my hero section, and I have the logo as an SVG. So I'm going to select all three of them. I'm going to open them up. And as you can see, these are populated into the assets panel, ready for me to implement into the site when I so choose so. You can see here, it's just loading and now it is uploaded. Right, the next panel is settings. So pretty much I don't use any of this except for backups just in case anything goes wrong. So of course we're going to have to upgrade, but if, for example, you made some changes 4 hours ago, you didn't notice, what you can do is you can go back to that site, make it live, copy whatever you missed out and then add it back into the new site. So this is, and the great thing about this is it automatically updates probably every 30 minutes. So you're never going to lose any. I've never been in a situation where I've lost any content, which is great news. These last three panels are plugins. You can see these plugins in my YouTube video, which I will link at the end of this. These are some of my favorite plugins. So yeah, you probably won't have access to these, but you just download them from the Chrome store, which isn't a problem. Okay, so these pretty much you will not be needing to use. And then let's come over to the right-hand panel. Now, like I said, this left-hand panel is all of the core structures and your website navigation, all of that stuff to easily navigate around the site and basically start building it. The right hand panel is specific to each element. So this is called the styles panel. For example, let's look at a body section. Now, to actually implement this, what we're going to do is come over to a quick little landing page hero that I've created for my website. And we're going to start building this to show off how the styles panels work. So we've got the body section, which houses everything. You tend to want to leave this no name selected. So every single element, except for these pink ones, which are HTML tags, which basically mean they are core structures of the website, and you don't want to name these because it's going to make things very complex. So anything with a HTML tag, just leave as. The blue tags are basically your own naming conventions. So if we come into our section, now for sections, we do want to call names to sections. You can see it hasn't got a pink tag. So what we're going to call this is we're going to call it section, and we're using a thing called BEM naming convention. Pretty much for everything, this is for everything, you want to use lowercase, never capital letters, and you want to use dashes and underscores. So section, for this use case, we're not going to use underscores, we're going to use dashes as spaces because underscores signify a separate thing. And just for the ease of us beginners, we're just going to use dashes. So we're going to call this section hero, which signifies that this is a section for the hero of this website. Now, the container class basically allows, if we come up to here, you'll see we're already set to a laptop width, and this is where your responsiveness is. We've got laptop, iPad, landscape phone, and then we have got portrait phone. Show off the container. What I'm going to do is what I tend to do is I don't add these slightly bigger viewports. I add the biggest one, which is 1920. So we're looking at like big TV screens for the website. So it's going to ask you, do you want to create this breakpoint? I'm going to say yes. It's always good to check on a larger screen. So you can see what happens here is this container doesn't grow. Do you see how it's sat smack bang in the center and it hasn't filled out the width of the page? Now the reason for that is if we come down to the styles panel, you'll see here the size is actually set to 940 pixels maximum width. So that's what a container is. It makes sure that the website is contained at a maximum width so that it doesn't overflow and look horrible. So that's a good point to start with the actual styles panel. So we're going to actually name this container, all lowercase. Let's push enter. Now let's go to the columns. Now again, these have got preset names, but I like to name everything. So I'm going to call this column, and I'm going to call this dash group because there's a group of elements inside. And then I'm going to call this one column because I want this element to also inherit the same styles as the first one. I'm going to call that column as well. So anything that has the same name, you see these two have the same name. If you change anything to do with these elements, see I've just set 88 pixels. Let's set 100 pixels to this column. If we select the other one, you see that this also has the 100. So anything with the same name is going to inherit the styles throughout your website. So this is why naming conventions are very important, because it can either become an incredible mess or you can make your life very easy. Now, an easy way to see before you edit anything, if you're going to be editing multiple elements, is here. See, it says 2 on this page. So if we just select column group, because we only have one element, there's only one. Now, if we duplicated a column group, now we have 4 columns and 2 column groups. And as you can see, column group 2. And if you see column, we have 4. And all of these columns have the same 100 pixels here. Let's get rid of that. So the first very important styles feature is the naming convention. You want to make sure that you are being super clean, and I suggest you look into BEM FinSuite naming conventions. I have done a video on this where I delve into naming conventions. Now let's start actually building this website hero. So for the section, the best what we want to do, if we come over to design, we can see that the overall section of this block is this black color. So I'm using a software called Figma, which is super handy. It allows me to copy all of the styles. So if I just copy that, But you can use anything, Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, anything you want, or you can build straight into the program. So we want to set this section hero to a black background. So if you see here, I'm going to scroll down and then you can see backgrounds here. I'm going to select this color and then we've got the hex code here. I'm going to select, push Command V, and then I'm going to push the plus symbol here, and then we're going to call that black, and it's already called it black itself. I'm going to come over to here and click create, and see, here's a tooltip. We're just going to push OK, got it. And as you can see now, this is saved within my colors panel. It's going to allow me to use this color throughout the site easily without having to put the hex in. So now we want to select that and push black. And now of course, why hasn't it shown black? Now that is because the element has actually got no height to it. As you can see, this blue line, it's literally just not even one div, it's just right at the top. So what we want to do is we want to make this the height of a normal screen. So if we come over to height here, I'm going to put 1080 pixels, and as you can see, this has filled the screen. Now 1080 pixels is an average height, but obviously it's going to set that to a width, and as you can see on larger viewports you're going to have this white space. Now great technique to use for heroes, this is a little bit advanced, but is to put 100 and then VH, and what VH basically means is viewport height. Now, if you select from this list, you can see all of these different styles or sizes that you can add to the website. So we've got pixels, which is pretty much when you're starting out, you want to be using to understand a website. You've got percentages, you've got EMs, which is an advanced unit, which I won't get into now. Rems, which you will want to learn. This is going to be the best unit you'll be using. One rem is basically set to the size of your base body font, which is normally 16 pixels. So yeah, you've got character height, you've got viewport width, and then what we've just used here is viewport height. Now some newer ones that have been added are SVW and SVH. These are for basically devices that have a movable. So on the iPhone, you know, when you scroll, there's different tabs on the on the page. It basically makes it variable to the scale, which you won't need to use now. Don't worry about it. So let's set this to 100 viewport height, and if we go back to the large screen, you can see, look, it's filled the viewport to 100 viewport height. So let's come back to laptop screen, base viewport, and you can see that the base viewport is what we should always be using with this star. And we're going to start creating content within this website. So what we want to do, I don't like using columns, so I'm going to get rid of that. And we've got the container here. What we want to do is add a div, which is here. Now I'm going to call this hero-wrap. Now we want this to fill 100% of the viewport screen. Now, like I said, we want to add a div within the container, and I've called this hero wrap. And then we want to come over to height, which is here. Again, we want this to be 100 viewport height. And as you can see, this blue border has pulled this div block to the, you can see where the bounding areas are. Now, layout is going to allow you to obviously structure things in a certain way. So if I put some elements into this, so if we go back to the website, we of course have a heading font, a paragraph, and a button on the left hand side, and an image to the right. So let's just drop some elements in here. So quick little tip for you, instead of coming up here every time and clicking your elements, use Command E, and then you can search for your elements here. So for the first element we need is a heading. So I've just typed in HE, and you can see our heading is here. Now we'll get into heading classes at a later date, but pretty much we're just going to use the H1 for the hero here. Now none of this is going to be styled, we'll style it afterwards. Again, we want to select the hero wrap, so that we make sure all of our elements go into it. We're going to push Command E, and then we're going to select a paragraph, which is here. So now we've got a paragraph. Same again, we want to select the hero wrap, Command E, and we're going to select button. Cool. We have a button, H1, and a paragraph, and now we just need to add image. So same again, Command E, image, press enter, and now we have our image. Now what we want to do, because there is 2 columns here, like I said, I don't like using the column sections because there's not a lot of customizability. Instead, what I want to do is select the heading. And here's another quick tip: instead of wrapping these in a div by selecting it, we want to right click, and you can see here wrap in div block. Now you can see here the H1 heading has now been put in this div block. Let's call this hero-left wrap. And then what we want to do is copy in the paragraph. We want to put in the button, put the paragraph above the button. And then the image is set below this. But now this is where things are going to get interesting. We'll go back to hero wrap, and we're going to come over to our layout panel. Now, if we select flex, which is a very powerful tool, we can do it vertical, we can do it horizontal. And as you can see, if we select different alignments, we can center it, right align, we can make it full width, we can justify the top and bottom. Of course, with this, you're not really going to see much. As you can see, that centered it. We can bottom it, but we don't want any of that, so we want to get rid of these. So a quick way to get rid of any styles, as you can see, the ones that are blue have set styles. So what you can do to get rid of these is actually select option and click on the blue, and as you can see, it's just removed it. So this is an easy way to go through all of your panels. See here, this one's blue. We got rid of the viewport height, you get rid of that. So this is a good way of maintaining that you are creating as less styles as possible, because that's going to make sure that your website's nice and clean. So that's Flex, a very simple box to order things. But for this, we're going to use the power of grid. Now look, might look a little bit complex, but what you can do here is actually create different grids based on this panel here. Now you can see here we've got gaps of 16 pixels, which is here and here. So if we obviously increase that to 32 pixels, you can see it grows larger or smaller. Now we don't need actually 2 rows, we only need 2 columns. So if we come over here, we've got our 2 columns, which is great, but if we go to our rows, we don't want the second row. So we're going to come over to here, see this little bin, and we're going to remove that. There we go, we've got 2 columns, and now the power of this compared to columns is this is going to allow us to be more responsive with the grid element. So now we're done with that, we want to select, come down to here and click done. There we go, we've got 2 columns for our website using the grid element. Now inline, text inline and hide, you don't really need to know. You might need to use hide, but that basically, as you can see, it's hidden everything that is within the block set, which you can see by here. We don't want that though, so we're going to come back to display and select control and we're going to select option and get rid of that and set it back to the grid. Right, so we need to start styling these elements that are in here. So another very important element that we need to know about is the spacings. Now let's select our hero left wrap. What we want to actually do is make sure that when somebody comes onto this website, that all of the content is centered nicely in the middle. So what we want to do is come over to the align, and we want to center things in the center. As you can see, this has centered the content to the middle. Now we want to do that the same to the image. So we come over to the align, we come to center. Now the image, we actually want to fill 100% of the width of this element so that the image is always shown. And by setting this to a percentage means that when we get bigger, smaller, whatever size, as you can see, when we scale up and down, the image is always the same size, which is great. If we set this to a pixel, 50 pixels, it would, let's actually make that a little bit bigger. Do 250. You can see that the image would always be that size, and it's not going to be responsive, and we want responsive images. So make sure that is 100%. Let's actually give this image a name. So we're going to call this hero-image. Right, let's come over to the hero left wrap again. Now, if we come up to the name, because we want to name this before we style it, you can see we've got a HTML tag. So we actually don't need a name for this. What you want to do is select the H1 heading, and then you're going to style this based on whatever your design within your tool is. So I just want this text a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it 54 pixels, and then I'm going to come over to my design and I'm going to copy in my heading. Now let's just structure that differently. Now, what I want to do again is select the heading, make sure that we've got all H1 headings selected. And I want to now add the font, which you can see here is just set to a basic font. So like I said, we added fonts earlier. I want Lenima bold. I want to make the line height of this just a little bit bigger. Now, a good technique for this is not to use pixels. It's actually to use a dash. So I like to use 1.2 dash. Let's try 1.1. Let's try 1. And that's going to make sure that the line spacing is responsive throughout the site. Now let's add a color. So I've already got the white here. I'm going to just open up the Figma design. It's pure white. So we're going to select the color and we're just going to move that up to the top and select that. Again, we're going to add this color as white, create that. So we've always got our assets ready to use. Now, if we go down to iPad, now you can see on landscape, there's the text is right up against the side. Now, an element you want to add to your websites is actually a thing called padding. So within our container, we want to add a div called padding, which is going to add some spacing on the left and right. So we select our hero wrap. Again, we right click that, wrap that in a div. No names associated with this yet, so we're going to come over to the right and we're going to call this padding. Now, this is where I'm going to show you the spacing options. As you can see, we have margin and we have padding. Now, margin is actually going to set sizes outside of the box. Like I said, everything's using boxes. So you can see, outside of that, it's selected some size, and you can add in some inside sizes. So as you can see here, 2 different sizes. Now, of course, this is page a global padding, so we don't want to use margin. Let's just set this to 100 pixels, maybe a little bit less than that. Let's set it to 20 and then 20 on the other side. Now, if we see this in action, now you can actually see there's a little bit of spacing on the left and right. Now, if we didn't have that, you can see there's no responsiveness and it is just up against the edge. So now that we have a padding, let's actually keep on styling our website. So we want to add the color of this font here, which I've set to a slightly off-white. Oh, so before we do that, let's select our HTML tag. Now, in the future, I'll show you how to create a style guide, but for now, just select your HTML tag of all paragraphs. You're, of course, in the website going to have multiple different sizes, but we have this as 14 pixels at the moment. We're going to set this to 16 pixels, as that is pretty much a base unit for most websites. We're going to come down to the color of this. Now, the color is differently. We don't want to select it in backgrounds like we did with everything else. We want to come to typography and change the color within here. So I'm going to copy and paste that color into here, and then I'll call this white 02. Create that. Now, I actually have a different font that we're using for this, which is called Railway. So we'll come up here and we're going to add a line height of 1 dash. Let's actually make that 1.2 dash. No, let's do it to 3. Okay, I'm going to copy in that text. Cool. Now we want to have a little bit of spacing above the heading, between the heading and the paragraph. So what you want to do is select the heading. Again, right click the heading, wrap in a div block. Let's call this heading spacer. And then let's come down to a spacing element. And I tend to like spacing things with padding, and I'll show you why. So if we actually added a 10 pixel spacing to the margin, let's actually make it more obvious. So let's do a 40. It's hard to select the box. So you see when I'm selecting, it's selecting the H1. And say if you want to edit the spacer, you're going to have to get it from the navigation panel. Now, instead of doing that, if I got rid of the margin and added 40 to the padding, now you can see I can select the heading and the heading spacer much more easily without having to go to the navigator panel. There's little things like this that are just going to speed up your workflow so much more. Now, on top of that, another tip is to actually space things always the bottom elements. So I haven't, as you can tell, I haven't wrapped the paragraph and added a padding at the top. This is just going to ensure that you know everything's got a correct spacing to it and you know where to click. So for example, we need padding between the button and the paragraph. I'm not going to add the space to the button. I'll select the paragraph, right click, wrap in div. Let's call this paragraph spacer, and then let's add a 40 pixel bottom to that. Let's actually make this a little bit less. And there we go. We have our spacing in our website, and it's all throughout breakpoints, which you can see at the top here. Now, let's style this button. So first of all, we need to get this green. So we're going to select the button. Now, we don't want to select all links here. Sorry, we do want to select all links here, but if you have multiple button styles, you're going to have to make naming conventions for this. But here we go, we're going to add in green. No, apologies, we are going to have to create a button link here. So let's call this button, and then we're going to want to paste that green in, and I'm going to add a plus button and call this green, create, and then let's come over, copy the font, paste that in there. Now let's come up to the typography settings and select the black for the text, and then let's actually change the font to Lunima, or whichever font you are using. I'm going to increase the size of this to 16 pixels and then a 1.2 line space. There we go, we've got a button. Now, if you want to round the edges to your button, you want to scroll down, and then you can see that we have a new panel called Borders. So Borders is going to allow you to actually select either all the corners individually or the corners themselves. So I'm going to give this a 4 pixel. No, let's give it a 12 pixel, put that a bit down, 8 pixels, and that's going to give it to all of the edges. As you can see, we have a little rounded edge to the button. Now, of course, if you just wanted I don't know what reason you'd want to, but you could put 20 pixels for one edge, and then you can make some snazzy buttons. I don't advise doing that, but for this, we're just gonna, again, use Option to go back, and then just select 8 pixels for radius. Now, let's say that we want to link this button somewhere. So what we want to do is come over to a new panel that I haven't shown you. And this is the cog up here. And this is element settings. Now this is going to change dependent on what element you have. Now a button is going to have link settings here. And as you can see, we can select either an outside URL. We can select a page within your website. Now let's just, for ease, let's link this to our about page. And you can actually tick this to open a new tab, or preload the page so that it speeds up. Now you can use page sections, you can have links to your email or your phone. But pretty much that is the basics of your settings within here. Now let's come back to a hero image, and we're going to add an image that I've already uploaded. So let's come to our asset panel, which is over to the right here. And you can see that I already have the image ready to implement. So you can do this two ways. You can select the image from here, or you can come over and choose the image here, and it's going to open up the panel for you. And I'm just going to select, and bosh, there it is. Now if we come back over to the design, it is rotated. So we want to come back to the styles panel. With the hero image selected, I'm going to come all the way down to our effects panel. Now there's some really cool elements in here, like opacity. You can turn this down or up. You can have blending options, which I would advise looking into, because certain browsers don't work with many blending options. Now the second thing we want to do to this is actually rotate it. So again, within our effects panel, we've got 2D and 3D transforms. We want to push the plus button, and you can see here you can move up and down, left and right, angled. We can scale it, and of course what we want to do is rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it 25 degrees. There's an actual skew element as well here, which is great for interactions, but we just want that 25 rotation, which is there. Now cool, now we have an element already on the page. It's responsive. Let's actually use the transform tool again. And then let's move this 20 pixels, minus 20 pixels, minus 40. Let's try minus 40. There we go. And let's check the responsiveness of this. Let's go to iPad. This is working lovely. Perfect. Okay, so we've covered pretty much all of the panels. What we want to show you now is how to use interactions. So there's a button here. Let's say that we want some kind of color change on this. There's two ways you can change interactions. Now there's a very simple way. From the style selector up here, you can actually come over to the arrow just next to the name, and you can see the different states, which is shown here. So we've got a none state, we have a hover, pressed, focused, focus keyboard, and visited. What we want is just the hover. We select that, and you can see it's added a little tag next to the name to signify that we are in hover. Now, when we hover on this button, we want the background to change white. So we come to backgrounds, and we're going to select white. As you can see there in the left, it's actually changed. Now to add some form of smoothing to this, because of course if we just select out of that, it's going to be straight away. We actually want to smooth this, so we click back on the button. Now you can see when we select the arrow down, you can see if there's any styles applied to different states by this blue dot here. So just keep an eye on that. If you're going to be applying styles, just keep things clean. Now you're going to want to create transitions here, but make sure that you go back to the none state, and we come down to our effects panels, and we are going to click transitions. Now Webflow does a smart thing and it pre-selects normally the right one, but for here it hasn't. So I like to come down all the way to the bottom and just select all properties. And then duration is just going to be set to 200 milliseconds. I'm going to increase that to 400. And then you can select what style of easing you want. Just select these for now. And then let's actually preview that. You can see it's a little bit of a smoother transition. Now, more complex animations can actually be created if you come up to the top right with the interactions panel. So this is where things can get very complex, and you can have page triggers, which are here. So for example, loading animations, or you can have element triggers. So you could create the same button animation, but also add more. So you can have different styles. You can have mouse clicks, mouse hovers, mouse move over element, scroll into view while scrolling in view. For this video, we're not going to get into this because it can get pretty complex, but it's just worth knowing that when you do want to move on to more complex interactions, this is where that panel is. So now that we're done there, let's create a navigation. So let's come over to the top left and a navigator. Let's select body, and then let's select the plus button, and then let's just come down to a component for the navigation, which is in advanced. And here's the nav bar right here. Now, again, I like to create things from scratch, but for the use of the burger icon, which you can see here, if we go to preview. So now we want to watch our site, we can actually come to the top left here and you can see what the site looks like in live action. So it's got rid of the panels, and you can see we can scale all the way down and all the way up. And like I said, now we can actually see the burger icon working. We can scroll back up. And then if you want to come out of this, you come back up to the preview and select that. Okay, so for the nav bar, again, we want to name this nav bar. And then what we want to do is actually come to position. Now, position isn't a setting I haven't shown you yet. Position is going to allow you to, let's just delve into it. So relative is, everything's going to be pretty much set to static when you first come in. Relative means that any elements around it are going to be pushed around it. So as you can see, the nav bar has actually pushed the section hero down a little bit. Now, if we select absolute, you can see it's actually sitting on top of the section hero, and then you have these elements here where you can obviously full width it, full page it, put it at the bottom, top right, top left, top bottom, bottom left. Now with this element, absolute, it's only going to stay in one place. Now what I can show you this is if we actually make a new section, go up to body, Command E, add a, no, let's just actually duplicate section hero. So if we select section hero and press Command C and then Command V, now you can see we've got two sections. Now with the nav bar absolute at the top, you can see when we scroll down it doesn't stick to the top. Now most websites we want it to stick, so what we're going to do is go to position and then have that fixed to the top of the website. And as we can see, if we preview this, it's going to stay at the top of the website, making it very handy. All right, let's come back to our design. As we can see, we have just a black background, so it's going to be opaque. Preset nav bars have this DDD set, so we're actually going to set this to nothing. So click on the color, and then I'm going to set transparent here. Now I want to give this a padding, couple padding top and bottom, just to give this some space. So I'm going to give it 10 pixels to the top and 10 pixels to the bottom. Now the navbar comes with a preset container, but again, this hasn't got its global setting set to it. So what we want to do is make sure that we are selecting a container. So if we type in con, you can see the container that we created is already there. So we want to set that there. And then the brand left, we want to unchange the color background of all links to nothing. So if we select all links and then you come down to where you can see this blue, it's actually set to green. So let's select option, get rid of that. Now let's add a image within this brand. So we're going to select Command E and then type in image, press enter because we have the image selected here. And then we're going to come over, see you can easily choose image here or from the settings panel up the top, as you can see here, choose image, but we'll do it for here for ease. And then we're going to select our legacy logo. Nice. Now we want this all to be centered. So another great option you can do here is actually to use margin auto. So no, that did not work. So what we want to do is actually create the brand. We want to name this. I'm going to call this logo wrap. And then we want to make the height 100% of the nav bar. No, we don't want to do that either. What we want to do is wrap both. Let's try wrap the logo and then move the logo menu into that. And then let's try make that 100% height. How annoying. I believe it's because it's the container. Okay, so this is where we're going to use a combo class. So the container, for some reason, is because it's set to block, it's not allowing any elements inside to obviously be centered. So what we're going to do is make a combo class. Now, this is a very powerful way to add settings to preset divs that you've created. So our container class, we actually want to add we want to have this navigation container. Now that's going to have 2 names to it. And you can keep on doing this, but pretty much what you want to do is ensure that you only really keep these to 2 or 3 names. Now the layout, we want to change the flex. We want to make it centered. There we go. So we've got it centered, and we want this to be left and right. Now, the div block that we wrapped everything in, we want to make that 100% of the width, 100% of the height, and then we want to set that to flex as well, center that, and then make that set left and right. Let's call this navigation wrap. There we go. Now, the nav menu, we actually want to name this as well, nav menu, and then the links that are within that, we want to name them. So, nav-link, and we check the color. It is white, so we come down to our font. So I'm going to change this to Lunima, my font of choice, change that to white. And now this is an easy way to show you how you can set names to multiple things and change multiple elements. So nav link, select that, and look, it's copying in the styles, nice and easy. And then what you can do here to obviously speed things up is, if I change the padding there, it's going to change it to all 3, but I like actually the spacing here. So we've got home, about, contact. Let's change this to projects. Let's change this to services. Let's add in a button. So we go to click nav menu, command button. Now, of course, we want to have this styled as a button choice. So there we go. Right, we want to center this. So let's actually use flex, select a nav menu. And then we want to center this in the middle. Now, the button, we want to have a bit of spacing on the left. So we're going to make a combo class and call this button navigation. And then add a bit of margin, use 20 pixels. Let's change this to speak to expert. And there we go. We've got our own little landing page that is working. So this is why Webflow is super powerful, is because it's actually utilizing the box model whilst being able to be a visual builder. So you're going to be able to create super sophisticated websites utilizing the best methods possible within web design, rather than having a drag and drop tool that's going to be creating multiple divs, multiple components that is actually going to slow down your site. This is why a lot of people say that Webflow is amazing, because you can create super fast websites, and I've created super fast websites, and you can check these using Google Lighthouse and ensuring that you have 100% page speed score. So I, for one, think that Webflow is an amazing tool to use, but definitely if I was you, I would look into it, try out some other tools, but preferably I would be saying use this, because you are going to become a very good web developer using it. Now, this was just a basic tutorial looking in depth into all of the features of the platform, but if you do want to learn more, there is a Facebook group linked below, along with a newsletter where I share all of the tools and tricks, the latest ones that are coming out with Webflow. And we will be releasing a advanced Webflow course academy where you'll get certificates to obviously show that you know what you're doing within Webflow. Of course, if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe and let me know what you think about this video, and I will be creating more if you dislike or like, depending on that. Anyway, have a great day, and I hope to speak to you guys soon.